right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ain't Nothing New Under the Sun. My name is Darius.
I am George, and today we have a guest on. You're more than welcome to introduce yourself, AJ. What's up?
What is good? My name is AJK. I am from Yonkers, New York. It's like 20 minutes north of the city, and I'm stoked to be on this podcast.
All right.
Go ahead and say your social media, bro. Whatever you want to do.
All my social media has been redacted.
All right. It happens to the best of us. Sadly, nowadays in the purge, or the new age purge, the technical purge. So let's get this started. We're 3 different time zones across the U.S. That's our reach. We're trying to reach across the U.S. Even sometimes we get unexpected Russian visitors that hack in. So today we're going to be talking a little bit with our guest AJ about Wayfair and all the what is true, what is not true. Some of it's conspiracy, some of it's fun for some evil people, whatever you want to call it. And then we're going to be getting into a little bit of the deep fake. So hopefully someone makes a deep fake of us for fun. Just put it on like a porn star's body for me, and I'll be happy. So AJ, take it away. Tell us give us a little introduction about Wayfair, and then let's kind of go into some of the madness behind it.
Cool. So my understanding about Wayfair, and I've done limited research, and this is based on, just conjecture, whatever I've heard from other people. But I remember seeing that original tweet. Someone had retweeted the original tweet that said, "Why is Wayfair charging $10K for a cabinet with a girl's name? And then why is there a missing person with the same unique..." Like, it was kind of an obscure name. It wasn't like the Jessica cabinet. It's like kind of sketchy that the cabinet was named after a girl who had gone missing, and it was marked up to $10K for some reason. So I started thinking, like, okay, if there's human trafficking going on in the world, it probably doesn't all look like Taken 1, 2, and 3 with, like, sheiks in closed-off underground areas. Like, this shit could very much be happening right in front of us. And you guys were started telling me about the woman who called Wayfair, and I never heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the cabinet we have up right now is $23,499.99, of course, for the tax. And then this one is a utility, Alvia. Yes, sorry, it's just like a really small writing on there. So this is the Alvia cabinet. So $10,000 to $23,000 for a plain cabinet.
And I don't know, it's all kind of sketchy. Even when you put into if you put in the actual code from Wayfair and you put it into Google, it'll show children's images also.
The SKU number or like the item number? That shit's crazy too. How, like, can a coincidence like that happen? I don't know.
I mean, that's what kind of...
That's quite a quinkadink on their end.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of a part of the show. Like, there's too much coincidence. Too much coincidence in the world to not be a coincidence at this point. Like,
yeah, how many coincidences does it take to be mathematically impossible, they say?
Right.
And, going into like Wayfair's backstory and like the people they hire, one of the people is Andrea Jung, who's a Clinton Initiative or Clinton Global Initiative board member, that's kind of also pretty shady. And the Clinton Initiative is essentially like kind of known for, during that, I think it was 2006, the Haiti earthquake, we're bringing in about 33 Haitian kids that they said were orphans,
refugees?
But they actually they were orphans, but they actually had families. And the person that was bringing them in was the VP of marketing for Amber Alert. So I don't know. There's just going into the coincidence. There's just too much of it at a certain point. You kind of have to question
she was literally caught smuggling these kids, saying that they were orphaned, but they were actually not orphaned. They had real parents, and some of the kids were either missing or just paid for in general. All right, tell us a little bit more about this Wayfair. I have some images that'll keep popping up here and there.
I was going to say, you mentioned it was tied to Pizzagate. How what's the relation there?
Well, Pizzagate initially was James Galifianakis Comet Pizza restaurant that was linked into, and James Galifianakis is like the fifth most powerful person in DC. He's also confirmed to be a Rothschild.
Wow.
So, also Comet Pizza was like known to have a basement, but everyone, I don't know, the conspiracy world is kind of split
Okay,
up on that.
well, okay, so a few things that are not split up. So there was some misinformation where they were trying to say that he does not have a basement, but you can go back to 2015. He had an article saying that he was in this article talking about what makes his pizza the best is he has his own tomatoes and makes his own tomato sauce. That's the key to making it in DC, and he stores all his sauce in the basement. That's what it says in this article. And then later on, you had Hillary Clinton talking about how this is ridiculous, Comet Ping Pong's fake. There's not even a basement. And the reason why everyone doesn't understand about the weird part about Comet Ping Pong Pizza is not only is he one of the most influential and powerful people in DC for only having a pizza, but he's the reason why he is because every powerful politician or elitist goes and eats there. They have parties there. It's like the adult Chuck E. Cheese, apparently. Just twice the nightmares and horror. The tunnels are no escape for children. So, it's one of those things where there's a lot of misinformation about it and disinformation.
I know Podesta is like clearly linked to it, but I don't know if that's like a straw man or like
well, again, like
trying to tie it to him.
Yeah, so
for
Podesta,
whatever political purpose.
So the thing about Podesta is the same with Hillary and all of them. So in the Podesta emails, they talk to one another about going to Comet Ping Pong Pizza and having,
I see.
And Hillary mentioned to Podesta about, and then talking to someone else, I forgot who, about their, made a joke about sacrifice night, and then they talked about going there all the time, and
that was part of the WikiLeaks.
Yeah, it was
right?
a part of the WikiLeaks of his emails, and they actually said that they kept saying going to Comet Ping Pong, going there, going for this night, this type of night. This is my favorite type of pizza. This is my favorite. And let's be real,
and
nobody
it
talks.
was code.
Yeah,
it seemed like code.
Well, okay, first of all, who uses email to talk about pizza? Like, I have never. First of all, I don't even use email, unless it's like business or something related. Like, I don't.
Right.
Like, or I'm trying to get some of my Groupons, So it almost doesn't make sense why you like I love pizza, but like I'm not gonna be like texting George all the time. Like, unless it was like they're like, hey, like, do you want to go to get some pizza this, I'm going down to San Clemente to get some pizza port, something like that. Not like, hey, oh my God, Twitter world,
we just got
so
some extra fresh pizza in wink wink emoji.
The cheese is 4 years aged, like you like it, It's like, so
I remember reading some of the emails and seeing the same code used between different people, and that's when I was like, okay, there's got to be more to what language they're using than them coincidentally talking about pizza. Yeah. And again, why are they using email to talk about pizza? That's kind of crazy.
So they talk about pizza and hot dogs. Those are kind of like the difference. So pizza is a young girl, hot dog is a young boy. And then if they're like super young, there's like a type of cheese or sauce. And then there's like a type of, whatever, what have you. So that's how they, get into it. And there are actual FBI documentation talking about, which I just pulled up right now, about the the triangles going in within triangles. I just pulled it up right now. So these are symbols and logos used by pedophilia to identify sexual preference, right? So they have male and female sexual preference, and depending on what it is. So they actually already showed it, and Comet Ping Pong actually at the time had these symbols in it. And actually these symbols have been around in a lot of different kids shows and a lot of different just different places. Like, okay, you could say it looks cool having triangles within triangles, but when it's the exact symbol used that the FBI themselves have said, no, this is literal, like, this is what it means. This is how they do it to signify who they are and their preference.
Well, the Comet Ping Pong logo even signifies the boy lover symbol into it also.
Yeah, so I have it up. And And then the female version is like a heart within a heart. It's actually the same symbol as Roxy, the brand, the clothing brand.
Yeah,
wow.
which is
Yeah.
it's super shady. And going into Podesta, like his brother Tony Podesta is kind of a known pedophile, also, and kind of known for some weird ass artwork
He's
involving
an art
kids.
collector, they call themselves.
And you can kind of even look up Tony Podesta and see his art. You can see it on Google even, man. And it's like little kids with their butts slapped, and then like there's certain statues that have
I
the
saw
head
some of the
chopped off.
statues. That was
Yeah,
kind of
and
sick. Like,
it's
who
the
has that
same-
in their house to
Yeah,
just
Exactly.
like appreciate as art?
Yeah.
Exactly, and
Someone
it
being
involves that
beheaded.
that gay dude, that serial killer. That I forgot his name. I don't know why it's not coming to me. But essentially, he did the same poses with his victims and photographed those. So it's just, again, too much of a coincidence at a point where you just have to question it. And
It's the problem is if it's not nefarious, it's at least really creepy and weird. So even if it's not like directly linked to child porn, quote unquote, or child pedophilia or death, it's still pretty fucking odd. And why do we have such powerful people that like certain types of things like this? It's even going back to Wayfair, like even if like they tried to say that, oh, it's an industrial cabinet, that's why it costs so much money. These cabinets, which one cabinet was, I heard was debunked. The girl actually did come up not missing, but sorry, one girl out of 15 girls came up not missing, and she was like the oldest of all of them, so obviously, like, you're not trying to buy a 17-year-old. That's old. You spent used goods. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're trying to buy fucking 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and younger, because they
Disgusting.
If you really want to get into the more conspiratorial side of it, is adrenochrome. A lot of have you heard of adrenochrome?
No. Is it the platelet thing where you like inject young blood, or am I going off on something completely differently?
Close. So okay. So my whole how should I say this? Kind of like diving into this actually starts years ago, because it actually was into the platelets. I had a conversation with my dad about how he found this video years ago about how like Keith Richard and Mick Jagger started doing blood transfusions with young adults, like teenagers, right? And that's what saved their lives. Like there was like some documentary about how they used to do these blood transfusions because they were they aged real quick with those drugs, dude. Like, and I don't know if you've seen Mick Jagger. I've seen him personally in the last couple of years. He came into one of my restaurants, and he looks the same for 40 years. Not good, but he looks the same, And so this documentary was talking about how they were using cutting edge technology to do certain type of platelet and blood transfusions and to get certain hormones from young adults, right? And then kind of flash forward to what's happening recently. So adrenochrome is when you have hit pre-puberty, your adrenaline secretes two things: adrenochrome and adrenaline. So like adults like us, we don't have adrenochrome, right? We don't have this. But
we just synthesize adrenaline or norepinephrine directly.
Yeah. And so what happens is if you put children into hostile, dangerous, traumatic situations, right? Their adrenaline, they don't just produce adrenaline, but they produce something called adrenochrome. And so which actually, even diving back in a more weird thing, watch this movie called Perfume. It's along the same lines, but it's not about children. It's actually about like this man in France was trying to create the perfect perfume, and he was taking hormones from hookers. He would make them orgasm and then make them scared to get as much adrenaline, and then he'd kill them, and then he would put them in wax and extract the hormones, and then make a perfume with that and roses to make the most potent, powerful perfume, right? So
this is Perfume, the story of a murderer.
I believe it might be that one. It's about like a French guy. Obviously it's not real, but well, maybe could be. But yeah, so flash forward to what's happening now. So they're finding out there's this thing called adrenochrome, and if you want to see the creepiest thing, you can right now go to Alibaba.com, type in adrenochrome, right? So once you go to their search bar, type it in. Tell me what you see. Like, this is gonna fuck you up a little bit. So not only is adrenochrome real, but you can buy it as a regular
What the
person.
fuck?
Yeah, and now look at the suggestions. Like,
the first result is straight human unprocessed virgin hair bundles, virgin cuticle.
yeah,
Virgin? Wait, what the fuck? Virgin cuticle aligned hair? What the hell?
but like so like
And now look at the. I see a lot of wig suggestions. Hang on, let me. I searched it through Google. Let me try.
no.
through
So go to
Alibaba.
actual Alibaba, the
Yeah.
website.
Okay, so the first thing I see is some sort of biological technology company, and it's like a red powder.
Yeah, so it's the reason why it's weird is like if you actually go to like the website, when you go to Alibaba and you type in something, right? So like say I wanted to get tinctures. Tinctures are gonna say, okay, what millimeter do you want? It's gonna give you suggestions. So when you go to Alibaba's website and you type in adrenochrome, it's gonna give you suggestions. Do you want isolate? Do you want pure? Do you want raw? Do you want child? Do you want female? It will actually give you these suggestions.
Oh my god. Okay, wait. I'm trying to navigate their site. The suggestions for it.
Yeah, so like it should pop up when you actually type it in.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll give you suggestions. So yeah, so adrenochrome though is, they say, so again, I'm not, I don't dive into this myself, so I don't really know how to do it and how to extract it, but the word on the street is you can only get it through trauma and essentially putting a child or a preteen, into a stressful environment, and then that's how you get it.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. I've never heard of that before.
So adrenochrome is used to help retard aging in adults. And that's how, they say, like, a lot of elitists and a lot of powerful people, they use it because they use it as like, to help retard aging, to help them live longer, healthier lives as well. So they look better and live longer. And they say there is word around that Epstein was essentially not only the middleman for blackmailing people, but he was also a provider of children, because they would put said children that were on his island, through such crazy traumatic areas. Then they would use these children to get adrenochrome, and then they would sell it back to the people that did this.
Had invested.
Yeah. So
I see.
Yeah, so that's a pretty crazy thing to think about. It's not like, again, this is just, I don't know, I haven't done that exact research into what is adrenochrome. I'm not an actual physician or anything, but the word around, it's pretty weird. Regardless, it's not a good thing, especially if you could just buy it on Alibaba from China. That's pretty weird in my book, that it's like, you could actually buy some right now by the kilo.
And the word also the street is like there's a shortage of it due to all these nefarious prostitution rings and child sex trafficking rings that are getting ran up on by different agencies. So that's why you have people like Tom Hanks that are essentially in Greece right now, and kind of looking for adrenochrome. And I don't know, man. There's just,
I guess the Chinese knockoff is not that good.
It's not
But so going back to Wayfair, do you buy the two narratives that it was either a glitch or that they're industrial cabinets? Like, it was, because I've heard two different released reports.
I heard both of those things, and neither of them seem convincing. Like, how long are you going to list the cabinets at the wrong price before you determine it's a glitch, right? Like, aren't there people in charge of managing the website to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen? Especially with a company like Wayfair, where I believe they're mostly e-commerce or 100% e-commerce.
Mm-hmm.
So to think that something like that would slip through the cracks when you have a team of people hired to keep track of that, that's a little too much for me. And the other idea that, you mentioned it before, if you have $400 in Libya, you can buy a person. I remember hearing someone say $10,000 for a child, that's way too little. So it seems like if you can buy a child elsewhere for as little as $400 American, there's the potential for something like that to be hidden in plain sight. Because we only know so much about the percentage of people who are abducted every year. And that's only in the U.S. These are like reported people who are missing.
Mhm.
What about across the world or in areas where they don't have proper, infrastructure to count the statistics of how many people are missing?
Especially in Europe.
Well,
Right.
no, I would say like in Asia and Africa is where you can't really count them. People just go missing.
True.
True.
That
And
also.
it is crazy because they're just what in America alone it's 800,000 or something.
Mhm.
And now that doesn't mean some are not found, but just reported missing children are 800,000 a year. Now, if you say you get 20,000 back, that's still 60 or sorry, 200,000 back. That's still 600,000 children that are just gone. You know, and
That
that's
blows my mind.
it's crazy. People kind of it's hard to really fathom because it's like, okay, we're free. Like, I don't want to get into COVID or anything, but you know, you're freaked out about 140,000 people dying, but what about these 800,000 children that are missing? You know, that's a lot, man. That's it's
You guys ever
hard to-
hear? Oh, I'm sorry. It's hard to wrap your head around how many people are missing in
Yeah.
the U.S. alone. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Have you guys ever heard anything about organ harvesting?
Yeah. There was
What's out there about that?
So there was actually a plant in Arizona that got in trouble when we were living out in Arizona in the beginning. That was organ harvesting in Mesa, Arizona, like black market shit. And that's
Were there
just in
any
Arizona.
details? Is that like a situation where they're just abducting people and taking their organs, or are they taking the organs from recently deceased people? Like,
Well,
I think it was recently deceased people,
I think it might
but
be
still.
But the thing about organ harvesting, and especially in like Arizona, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Phoenix, and Tempe, Mesa, that whole area is in the top 5 biggest abduction and drugging places in the nation.
statistically?
Yes.
Holy shit.
There's more people that are either abducted or drugged to be abducted than anywhere in the U.S. I think it's like top 5. Because it's a party scene. There's lots of young drunk girls with fake IDs and that like to go out and party. Like that's, you know, there's ASU girls and then there's, you know, high school girls, college girls, and just locals. That the biggest thing that people do and their number one moneymaker are bars. Like
Right.
bar clubs.
Yeah.
They have bar clubs, not just like big clubs.
The
Like, they don't-
Old Town area in Scottsdale.
Yeah, the square, Old Town. So, you know, it's the number one roofie capital. It's one of the biggest
Holy shit.
drug trafficking, or not drug, sorry, people trafficking. So now, you know, some people argue it's because it's a 2-hour drive from the border. So, you know, but then a lot of these people are making it to the border. They're making it to, you know, worse lives and maybe even organ harvesting. And that actually goes back to kind of like the children as well. A lot of people say, okay, what comes from a child, right? And I was listening to this podcast recently. I forgot exactly who, but they're saying this is the thing about why they like to get like preteens, right? So you have many things that come from this. One, so say you're a pedophile, so you have your sexual needs that are taken care of. You have your adrenochrome needs that are taken care of, and then you have non-tainted organs, right, that are becoming fully developed. So if you have someone
They're
who's
not exposed to any drugs or
Yeah.
anything like that. Okay.
or at least the drugs, or at least not long-term exposed. So, you know, a liver of a 35-year-old man is nothing compared to a liver of a 14-year-old. You know,
I see.
kidneys, livers.
That reminds me of. Do you guys ever listen to Joe Rogan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it was Brett Weinstein on, and he was talking about how over the last 50 years, the genome for all rats that have been used for pharmaceutical testing have been unintentionally manipulated in the sense that they have been breeding rats for such a long time for specific characteristics, and the part of the human DNA, the telomere. It's at the end of the strand of DNA, right? So the tips of the strand of DNA have this basically junk code, and when the enzyme is moving along the telomere, it unwraps that junk code, and every time it does that, the telomere gets shorter. So they have connected this to aging, because as your telomeres get shorter, the ability to replicate cells in the fashion that they were when you were younger starts to break down. So that's the connection to aging. And then they've been using rats who have these extended telomeres for pharmaceutical drug testing, with paradoxical results, in the sense that sometimes when you give a rat too much of a drug, the telomeres will extend, and it'll seem like, or rather, I think it was that if you give them too much of the drug, the telomeres are so long that it seems like it doesn't have a negative effect, but that's only because their telomeres are longer. So in a rat, at like smaller doses in the rat, I need to look up this research again, but I think at smaller doses in the rat, you would see things like cancer happen, and they're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. But at higher doses, it wouldn't have an effect, something to that degree. And that has the implication that all pharmaceutical drugs are based on research on these this tainted population of rats, mm-hmm. for all of the research that they've done. And to admit fault and say, oh shit, all these rats that we've been using for research don't accurately reflect a human model because they have this artificially extended telomere, that the implications of that would basically destroy the entire pharmaceutical industry, because any drug released in the past 50 years has used rats that are not an accurate reflection of a human model.
Yeah, they evolved, you know?
Right.
Well, yeah, it's through,
and
it's because they're
the
breeding
pharmaceutical
themselves.
companies have enough money to kind of just carry on, mm-hmm. and not mention this and not be at fault for any sort of testing that has a negative impact on people. Think about it. Like, we're using drugs that have been approved on an experimental population that maybe in 50 years we'll find out they have these extremely negative effects on the human body. And you can't synthesize drugs at your house, so you couldn't experiment and find out on your own. We're reliant on this industry that has the capability of saying, oh, opioids are addictive? Fuck it, prescribe them anyway. Mm-hmm. And we'll give you more money if you do prescribe it. And we're at their hands, you know? This mm-hmm. is an industry that is corrupted, and it's very well understood that they have such a stake in the government, and you know, the pharmaceutical industry, as corrupt as it is, I don't see any way for us to combat it. Well, and I'm sorry to tie it all back to the organ harvesting thing, like that children who haven't been taking any sort of drugs that were approved in the last 50 years, they would have organs that haven't seen the effects yet. So that's even more of a reason to want organs that aren't tainted over, say, like an adult who passed away and now you're harvesting their organs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's untainted. It's more pure. Something, you know, so I have an argument that I've been arguing since fucking over 15 years, since I was like younger, is we have a real problem in America, and the problem is we don't care about long term. It's all about short term.
Humans in general are very bad at planning for the future. It's not in our evolutionary history. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, it's always been survival of the fittest, nomadic, and now we're in an age where we have access to the technology to stray away from our evolutionary history.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's the story of the date tree. You know, the monk was putting planting a date tree, and then someone says, well, why would you plant this? You're not going to eat the fruit. And they said, they're not the fruit. I will not, but the next generation will. It's for the next generation. People forget that sometimes you have to build something for the next generation. And, you know, something that kind of, you know, where the elites, I feel, if you want to get the conspiracy side of it, is where they do better than the average person is, they care about the long game. You know, super rich,
They're
super
trying to
elites.
extend their life
Yeah.
as long as possible to take advantage of all of
Whereas
Their
what
bloodline.
they
Yeah.
have been able to leverage out of society that may not exactly be widespread, but there's a group of elite people, I guess, who have access to that information, and they're trying to get away with keeping it in the circle as long as they can.
So I have a little conspiracy thought. So you know how you just mentioned the rats and how they were breeding them and it was causing them having issues, and so say if there is cloning, right, of some of these people, some of these elites, some of these celebrities, could that be why that they're having such like functional meltdowns and functional problems, health issues, and just breaking down of their bodies quicker than they should? I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a few that are in the conspiracy realm that people consider, maybe clones that are having like physical issues and mental issues.
I haven't heard about this. Who's suspected to be a clone?
So Britney Spears is one, Madonna, Biden. There's some just bigger ones recently. If a lot of people say Biden either has like a double or a clone because there's pictures and videos, and not just because of his hair plugs, but his earlobes are different and his eyes are different depending on what time of his life. Another one is Britney. She's been having like mental breakdowns. There's a creepy song. So when you have a chance, look up Mona Lisa by Britney Spears. Listen to at what is it, 48 seconds I believe of the song, and then there's 4-line verse. The fourth line is different than what you hear. So if you go to the lyrics are completely different than what you hear. It's kind of trippy. I believe it's about 48 seconds in.
It's about to play it right now.
Yeah, you gotta listen to this. It'll trip you out, man. I want you to tell me what you hear on the fourth line of the that verse. It's pretty interesting. But
is it the music video?
You can see the lyric video.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just looked it up. I just went on the first video. So I don't, because sometimes the problem about music videos, they have an introduction to them.
Yeah.
So that's not a good.
That's why I was wondering.
So before you look up what it says, or I guess listen to it.
Is it the "she's the girl" part?
No, it goes. She's been gone. That's what it said. The lyrics say. But listen to what she says.
Play for a snippet so we don't get pulled off YouTube.
No, he's just listening to it.
Yeah.
For all our viewers out here, I would like you to look it up yourselves and tell me what you think yourself.
Definitely.
So I just heard the part where it says she's been gone.
So yeah, what did you hear? Did you hear she's been? See, the problem is you're not supposed to.
I was reading it. Yeah.
See,
yeah.
you're not supposed to look up the lyric version. Look up the non. Yeah, next time.
She's the clone.
Yeah. It looks, dude. I don't know, man. I'm telling you, if you don't read it, because obviously, like when you read something, read along. That's how like
your brain perceives the sound to be that.
I don't know. That was just a fun one. I looked it up, and again, that could go back. It could actually get us into our deep fakes if you want to start talking about deep fakes, because it could have been altered at some point.
Right.
But yeah, so like those are just a few people that are saying that they're clones. Again, this is more for fun. Like, what do I actually believe? I don't know, man. Like, maybe, but if you want to believe there's clones, they can believe it. People believe in worse things, I guess.
The idea that she's been extremely limited. Like, doesn't her dad have
full access to everything?
Control over her?
He has all access to her finances and what she does, what she posts, where she goes. He has access over all of that. She has an allowance. So she's estimated about $3 million a year in earnings, and she only gets about $700,000. And that's because that's her lifestyle cost that much. She went to a rehab program that cost $500 a month a few years back. Let me tell you something about rehab. Rehab's all-inclusive. Celebrity rehab is on average, like Dr. Drew was $30,000 a month.
Wow. And now is that because you're paying for the name, or?
Well, it's because it's higher end, it's nicer. But like, imagine you can't even get an apartment in LA or New York for $500 a month. So what do you think a full inclusive rehab, dude? Prison, costs more than that. You know,
Right.
in prison. I'm not saying it costs you that money. It costs the taxpayers more money, but because rehab,
pretty crazy to
these
think
rehabs,
about.
you live there. Like you live there for months on end. Like you're not just like you go in every once in a while. Or
You're stuck there.
yeah. Are you putting a mask on your tinfoil hat there?
Well, I ripped the label off my beer, and I figured I'd add some extra protection, because if it can't go through foil, then it can't go through paper.
Obviously.
Love it, by the way. Love it.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It's an obvious choice, you know?
Oh yeah, especially talking about this type of shit. I get it. Yeah. So
Some people
going
ask me
into-
why I wear it, and I figure the best response is, why aren't you wearing one?
You gotta be loyal to the foil, my man. Now, let me ask
Nice.
you the most serious part about this, though.
Okay.
Is it tin foil or aluminum foil?
The composition of the alloy in the foil on my head is a trade secret. You
Okay.
see, this foil isn't just to block out the 5G, it's also to block out any sort of radio waves that would be transmitted to the microchip in the vaccine that we're all going to get. So I'm just getting used to having it on my head, because I figure in a couple months we're all going to have this on our head.
Hey, that's important, man. I personally like 2024. 3034 is another good one you can always have, but you know, depending on what
Yeah.
kind of metal composition you enjoy. So, all right, I was just important, you know, like it's almost as important as the hat itself. But hey, you know,
Right.
I'm the one being controlled right now by the chip. You're not. You're the smart one.
Thank you.
You know, hey,
I mean,
you could pretend to
carry a
have,
phone around,
Yeah.
you probably are releasing just as much information as a chip would.
Oh,
so
you know, I always think it's,
totally a reason to put a chip in as well.
yeah, I always think it's funny that the deep state spent ungodly amount of money trying to do that what Facebook did for free. What Facebook got paid to do. You know, they now can
Collecting information on
collecting
people.
information, data mining.
Yeah.
Data mining's
Yeah.
worth so much money. So, you know, it's like people are like, I don't want to get the chip, but it's like you got a cell phone on you all the time, don't you? Just as
You
bad.
click accept to the legal agreement on several social media websites that are now tracking your internet history to sell you more shit.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You're fucked already. Who needs a microchip?
Yeah.
Like, how would you miniaturize that technology? How are you going to have a microchip that lasts, I don't know how long they need it to last, but let's say a lifetime inside someone's bloodstream? And then, like, what kind of information are they going to get from that they wouldn't get by searching your, say, doctor's visit, like, history? You know?
So,
Oh, yeah.
well,
They
it's
can
funny because
instantly access every medical reason you've been to the doctor and adjust your insurance accordingly. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, that shit already exists. And
that's
what would a
actually-
microchip provide that they can't already determine? That's beyond me. And
That's-
the cost to make a tiny microchip that can, like, survive in your blood.
Mhm.
I don't think the technology's there yet. It seems
Well,
like a
a few
sorry, go
things.
ahead.
Sorry, no, sorry. So, one, it's funny because my dad actually did his dissertation in risk analysis and adjustment for like mathematical models for healthcare. So I've been around that my whole life. So it's something that they already do. Like
Wow, your dad worked in that?
yeah, he's not in it anymore. He hates it. He said it was the worst,
Wow.
most evil, corrupt. He said healthcare is just as corrupt as politicians. It's all, and actually the government.
All about the money.
He actually worked at a
I
company.
used to work
that
in
the
an
gov-
ER,
Really?
but I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Go ahead. You used to
He
work
worked-
at what kind of company?
He worked at this place called Tower Health that essentially the CEO did illegal dealings and messed up, and the feds essentially came in and stripped the whole company and rehired my father to fire, strip, and essentially have it be dissolved and redistributed into other insurance companies. It's pretty crazy. Then this was in the 90s. This was not. This
Wow.
is not recent. This is late 90s, early 2000s. But going into the chips, well, the thing is, first, they don't need chips anymore. I know chips are more of just scary. The one thing, though, that I heard that they're looking into is not so much a chip. It's more of a tattoo barcode, right? So you get this implant that is, on one hand, it's partially a chip, and if you start to research nanotechnology, they do have some pretty powerful nanocomputers, but nothing that can do what essentially the chips, what they're saying they could do, but what Bill Gates is working on is this imprint tattoo that is a mixture of a chip slash tattoo that they imprint into your skin. And what you do is
basically a way to barcode people.
It's a barcode. So it's the same way as like your debit card doesn't have any information other than, what your account is. And then it's the actual machine that you swipe that takes you to the bank account, takes you to the information, right? So it's the same thing. So when they scan you, it's not that this holds any information on your chip or your barcode, I should say, but this will link them to the information. So they're talking about doing this for who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated and medical histories. So, before you get on the plane, here's my ticket and swipe my barcode. Boom, let's go. This is my entire history and background. What kind of vaccines I've had, who I've been in contact with, and kind of gives you like a whole layout of who this person is.
That's incredible considering that on the regular, anytime you use a facial scanner effect on your social media, like on Instagram, there's all sorts of filters you can put on your face, and you're willingly consenting to them.
No, dude, they sent nanobots to take that, dude. They just swipe that shit on you.
It is the nanobots. It's gotta be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're complete.
This is a prototype, so I gotta refine the design later. And,
I think the biggest joke is like, people get mad when it's non-American companies doing it, right? So people are like, for instance, they were doing the face scans on Snapchat. Well, it's an American company. They sell our information, but who cares? It's America. And then it's like when that Age Yourself company came out a year and a half ago, and people are making themselves into old people, and they're like, look what it would look like before the Snapchat did it. There was a company that did it. Then they find out it was a Russian company using Amazon servers in America, so it wasn't even, ever getting back to Russia. They were just Russian nationalists that lived in America that made it. And it was all over the news, and people were like, you're consenting to give the Russians your face. And then they're like, but Snapchat has the same filter, don't worry, consent to America. It's this hypocritical bullshit that like people fall into, where it's like, because we always have to have an enemy in America, because we always have to say, hey, don't look at what we're doing in the government, or in our corporate world.
China is the one that you need to worry about stealing your information.
TikTok.
It's okay if we steal your information because we're American.
Yeah.
But if China's stealing your information, then now you need to be scared.
Yeah. You don't even know what they're saying when they take your information. You don't know what they're saying. You should be afraid of that. So
yeah, I do. So have you guys looked into TikTok at all?
Oh yeah, we had an episode of that. Mm-hmm. Like, it's some. I mean,
I find
if
it
you're
crazy
connected to the government, you're fucked. Like,
yeah.
Well, it's just the thing
consented.
is, what's happening is people like you and me that don't really matter, nobody cares about. TikTok doesn't give a shit. But then it's like,
high-profile government officials, U.S. military, like people that can be tracked and have that information used in a way that could gain some sort of influence. That is,
or steal information, access their phones, access their data. So
listen in.
Yeah, listen in, use the camera, whatever, what have you. And I guess, I get the concern of the government is, what if they access, your child was using it, they get onto your network or your phone network, they pop to your phone through your child's phone, and then they access your camera while you're looking at top secret information. That's what their argument behind it kind of is. But obviously, we already have so many leaks in our intelligence community, it doesn't even matter. Here's a little fun fact. We've had 138 leaks of intelligence in the last 3 years, every year on average.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
It's kind of staggering when you consider how many people work at that high level clearance.
And the crazy part is, it's not whistleblowing, it's leaks. There's a complete difference, because like whistleblowing is they're doing something wrong and we need to get this out because this is wrong. And then leaks is, hey, this is damning information on a politician. Here it is, New York, or not New York, like New York Times. And something that the CIA has been doing since the 70s, they admitted it. George actually posted a video a couple weeks ago, where this operative was saying, yeah, like what we do is, and this is what Colin Powell did as well. We leak information to the news. The news runs a story on it, saying that our informant told us this. They turn around and use that information, saying, "See, even the news is reporting. This is our.
This is the new narrative.
We're citing them. We're citing them because this is already public knowledge, right? So this is why we have to do it. So this is kind of how the CIA, the deep state, and our government works. That's Colin Powell did the same exact thing about the weapons of mass destructions, and like look at even New York Times says that there's weapons of mass destructions, and now it's gotten to
look at the Trump report on the Russian collusion. That was another example.
Yeah, someone drunk at a bar making a joke, and that turned into fucking. And it's all.
It turned into a federal investigation
that cost us goddamn monies. Yeah, dude, it's one of those things where, they just use it to go against who they want to go against and to kind of push their own narratives and pushing their own ways of moving forward and making money or causing problems or getting us into wars, getting us into this, to where, that's beneficial to them in the end. And so another thing that a lot of, people probably don't know is, if you're like in the Senate, Congress, or most politicians, I don't think it's all, but it's most politicians, can't get charged with insider trading.
That shit blows my mind.
So if a lobbyist tells you information, you can, and that's how Feinstein just got off with her husband making $10 million a month before the quarantine hit and the stocks dropped. He sold all his stocks less than a month.
With the insider trading information that the economy was about to collapse.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the civil unrest is tied to that exact moment in history. Like, we started catching when that government officials were making hundreds of thousands of dollars from selling their stocks ahead of the coronavirus lockdowns, and there were no consequences for that. People were like, wait a second, now I'm broke. I can't even work if I wanted to. And you made millions of dollars from the fallout of this? And they misdirected the anger on a racial issue that could have been directed towards dealing with the corruption in the government that led to government officials making millions of dollars, and the everyday person, working class person, gets screwed.
But that's what happens every time, and then they hide behind bullshit rhetoric that will shield them. It's smoke and mirrors. That's how the deep state and politicians work. It's all about smoke and mirrors. It's you do something here behind the curtains, and then you cause something here on the side, and that's like a lot of conspiracy theorists get a lot of trouble, and this is why they weaponize conspiracy theories, because they get a lot of bullshit from average people, normies, we call them, because it's like, hey, no, there's a problem here. Maybe it's not exactly what we're saying, but there is a problem behind this. And, time and time again, you can look up Operation Northwoods. You can look up the Gulf of Tonkin. You can look up, Operation Paperclip. We mentioned so many different things that people, our government has done that no one knew about during the time. And it wasn't until, the late 80s, early 90s when the federal government got sued and had to start actually releasing classified information after the fact, as long as it's no longer damning or cause issues. They can redact certain things that could cause issues, but for the most part, that's the reason why we know all these things. So we've had multiple incidents of our government doing things nefarious to distract the normal people, and sadly the average person is going to jump on. They're going to say
misdirection is surreal.
Yeah, well, going into like the misdirection, the Iraq War, allegedly, Saddam Hussein, who declared war on the U.S., I think in 2004, apparently that wasn't even him. It was a stand-in, and Saddam Hussein was known to have a lot of stand-in. That was the original deep fake, going into like all that. And
even the stuff with Osama bin Laden, considering him like wearing a ring in one of his videos where like it's against the Muslim religion to wear jewelry, like that kind of shit blows my mind when you look deeper into it.
Well, yeah, you mentioned earlier, right before the podcast, this is something that is kind of semi-widely known, is that the government has technology far beyond what we do. They always, and we're, the civil sector is always years behind. So, they could have been the ones that started deep fakes, and it could have not just been technology-wise where it's using software, but it could be between having someone that looks almost identical plus software or, editing to make them seem to that person. And,
Right.
no offense, but if you have someone with shitty tapes, a beard on, and, wrapped up partially half the time, it's kind of easier to fake someone than someone who's in perfect lighting with a fucking non-shaven,
High definition
with
video.
Yeah, so,
Dude,
and then it's
Saddam
always
Hussein, Arab guy with a mustache, they all look the same.
well, look, it's like if you get yeah, right, chubby Arab guy. So like shit, get me a tan and I'll get in trouble. So if you get this with like Osama bin Laden, right? It's like I know Joe Rogan in his specials in like 2008 was laughing about how like it's literally a comic book villain. Like we almost got him. Like we're the soldiers get in there, they find him, they track him, they go in
G.I. Joe.
Yeah. And then they kill all the
America.
insurgents.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, they kill all of them, and then apparently he's gone, but his guard is dead. And then they find a little tape, just one tape ready to go. That's like, oh my god, we have a tape. Like, really, you found a tape. Was there a few times where you didn't find a fucking tape? Like, come on. Like, it's like this billionaire, like, that used to work with the good guys, like worked with the CIA, trained and worked with the CIA. Like, don't talk about how he built hospitals in Afghanistan for years, because that's not, we don't need to know about that. He's a terrorist now. It's like he was literally trained by the CIA, armed by the CIA, and worked closely with the CIA to fight against the Russians in the, I think in the 80s originally, when they 70s or 80s, I believe, early 80s, when Russia tried to go to war and tried to invade Afghanistan. They lost. They got their ass kicked because the CIA sent an ungodly amount of money and trained all of the insurgents. And then now they're like, oh, they're turning on us, because we won't leave those poppy fields alone. Damn it.
Isn't it kind of convenient that opium it can make oxycodone? Like,
and then that became
crazy.
the number one drug in the 2000s to 2010s. The number one drug that's causing the number one problems in America right now. Like, if people forget how many people OD and have addictions to fucking opioids, like right now, it's an epidemic. Like, people are freaked out about COVID while their kids are fucking tweaking out in their fucking basement, dude. Like, it's ridiculous. And then
to go back to the whole insurance risk conversation we were having before. Have you guys ever done like Ancestry.com?
My family has. Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on that? The idea that you're sending your genetic code to a company.
This is my thing.
All part of the plan.
I will not. Like, my whole my dad straight up told my sisters, do not do it. Like, because my dad is like one part conspiracy theorist, one part businessman, one part like doctor, and like, so he's like this perfect combination where he's like, yeah, it sounds great, but we're not in the perfect world, You are literally like going back to what you said about signing
They say
consent.
they don't keep your sample, but the information is already processed. They can throw out your genetic sample and say that that's it. It's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. But it's already been uploaded to the cloud or whatever. They already have harvested that information. It exists. So to think that it's as innocent as they're like, okay, we're going to tell you who you are related to and then throw it away and that's it. Like, what about 10 years from now when their information leaks and now insurance companies are going to hike your fucking rates up because they know that you're susceptible to certain genetic diseases?
I heard a few things that are more like scary than that. Like, I heard that technically the sample they don't own, and that's why they get rid of it, but the information you no longer own. So like they can do what they want with that information, and they say that they're holding on to it, and they're like, oh, we're not going to sell it, but who's going to stop them when the board changes? They have a new board, and like you said, 10 years from now to sell that information, because again, data mining is the number is more than gold. It's worth more than gold. Your information is worth more than gold. And then another thing is,
or the possibility that someone could obtain that information covertly and we would never know about it.
Yeah.
and then sell it to an an insurance company and say, hey, here's the genealogy of all these people. Do what you want with it. Like, well, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, and no, I agree completely. And the scary part is that's the best case scenario what they're doing and tracking people's genetics. The worst case is if we do get to a point where either genetic manipulation of viruses or nanotechnology where you can actually track, trace, and get rid of certain genetic
specific
traits,
markers or traits.
Markers. I know that in the conspiracy realm, when the first waves were hitting, they realized like Iran, Italy, Sicily, like the Mediterranean was getting fucking, and Spain were being decimated, right?
Yeah.
And some of the conspiracy theorists were like, hey, do you know that they have the closest genealogy than like genetic coding than like they do with like Germany and Russia and stuff, and that's why they are getting hit harder. And some people are speculating like, could this been manipulated for specific types of people? It's like you're looking at something that hit China that apparently doesn't even affect Chinese nearly as much, even though the videos were showing people falling on the ground. But then if you look at what they're reporting, it's like, oh hey, we barely have anybody.
Do you think that's a government move to cover up their vulnerability during this time?
Either or. Honestly, it could be. Obviously, there is. See, like this is like a big debate in the conspiracy world. What's happening in China? Is it propaganda to make us hate them and make us be okay by dehumanizing them if and when we go to world war, and if they're a boogeyman, or is it real? And I think it's a culmination of both. I think it is real to a certain extent, like what's happened to Uyghurs.
But it's positioning, considering China has been overreaching in the like their local geographic area. Yeah, they have been in international waters that they've been sanctioned away from, and this has been going on for a while.
Mm-hmm. Well, it actually goes way beyond that. We actually had a couple episodes about what China's doing. Which is funny because it's like what China is doing is essentially what America has done. And the way to position yourself in power is two ways. You build up nations and you have them owe you money, which they're doing in Africa, parts of the Middle East, parts of Asia and South Pacific. And then they're also in the Caribbean as well. They're doing that in the Caribbean. They're rebuilding infrastructure, giving loans, doing this, and then they say, don't pay us back right away. But when you pay us back, if you cannot pay us back, we own ports, we own mineral and mining rights, right? Which is important because they want to become self-sufficient and self-sustaining. And
you have a population of how many billions of people live in China now?
It's almost 2 billion. And the crazy part about China is they don't have that much natural resources. A lot of China's desert
geography fucks them over when it comes to trying to sustain the life of your population.
They need what Germany used to call Lebensraum. They need more land. That's what Nazi Germany said. They want more land. So, and then they're building.
They've been doing it in passive ways.
Yeah, and then they are building faux islands. They are building or taking over islands. They're trying to control the reason why the South Pacific, everyone's having an issue with it, isn't just because of military dominance, which that's a huge, it's about 50% military dominance, because kick out America, we can do more in that area, right? But a lot of things that nobody ever talks about is how much money goes through the South Pacific in trading, right?
Yeah.
That's a trade route. That's an international trade route, is the South Pacific. And so if you control the waters, you control the trade. If you control the trade, you control the flow of money. And if you control the flow of money, you control economies. And if you control economies, you control countries. That's huge.
Well, yeah.
But so nobody will talk about that. I haven't seen anybody talk about that.
Well, did you hear about like the Houston Chinese?
Yeah.
So, So they were
consulate.
burning like files and all that stuff, and now like, the Chinese consulate and like now you have protesters heckling staff outside, emptying Chinese consulate because they're getting kicked out of Houston at this point too. So it's like we always say, Darius. It's like the march of war at this point.
Yeah,
what's going to happen at this point?
We are at war with China in cyber, economic
Proxy
Yeah,
war.
we're in proxy wars.
Yeah.
The only war we're not engaging yet is physical battle. That's it. We have a social war. We have an economic, a cultural. Cultural and social is because our propaganda against them. They're the bad guy. Everyone should hate them. That's and China's saying no, America's the bad
Right.
guy. They've been doing this. We're doing the same thing as America. So,
What do you guys think the tipping point will be?
There may be a false flag. There may be another 9/11 type scenario.
I don't know. I kind of feel.
Oh no, that's my personal.
So
feeling.
I see this happening as, not to get political, but I think the difference will be who becomes president, right?
Time will tell.
I say if Trump wins, we might go to war. I know Trump doesn't want. He keeps saying he doesn't want to go to war. It was apparently when he spoke to Putin, RT News said that Putin told the news that they spoke about they want to stop this arms race, because I don't know if you've heard, but we've been in a huge arms race with China and Russia lately. We've been ramping up our military. They've been ramping up our military, and we're ramping up bombs. They're ramping, and the problem is everyone keeps saying nukes, nukes, nukes. That's not what's scary. It's supersonic missiles and aircrafts. It's you don't know how because the average ICBM right now takes 8 minutes to get across the world. Imagine something.
But if you can deploy a faster armament,
Yeah.
you have the advantage
Yeah.
over other countries.
So imagine something that has 2 minutes. Defenses have not enough time to have that. Like 2 minutes, you can't do
Even the most advanced anti-missile technology needs time to trace and
Yeah.
allocate the target and deploy whatever defense they have.
Yeah, so we're at this there's this huge arms race we've been in. And so apparently RT News reported that, the Putin administration said that essentially Trump was telling him like we need to stop. And I've been arguing that the reason why Trump is trying to repair relationships with Russia is because Russia knows they're only allies with China because of America, right? Because America's the common enemy, essentially. And I'm saying we really are, but in a geopolitical standpoint, we are their not enemy, but kind of not ally, right? We're not their ally. And so that's the only reason why they're allies. But I think Russia understands they don't have the economic or the military might anymore to be top dogs. And
They're very susceptible
Yeah.
being geologically closer than the United States.
so once the United States is crippled, what stops China from marching into wherever they want? Which would be Russian, because at the end of the day, Russia has nothing in the only thing Russia and China had in common was their governments were both communists, even though they were both different types of communists. They weren't even technically communists, and anymore they're not even technically communists. So that was the only thing that was kind of keeping them together. America's our enemy and we're communists. But I think Russia's realizing they have more in common with the West than they have with the East.
Yeah.
China. So, and I feel like Putin, especially after now becoming, infinite president, realizes if he really wants Russia to last much longer, it is beneficial to join closer with America. There is no, realistically, there is no real reason for war anymore. We don't really need to fight army battles anymore. We really don't, but it's more money reasons why. But I personally think the reason why they're trying to repair is because they realize China's moving too fast, too big, too hard. And China's within 5 years of being unstoppable.
Just look at Hong Kong.
Yeah.
No one wants to overstep with that scenario. It's a huge loss in terms of world trade and I guess globalization too.
Can't say free Hong Kong in the NBA.
Yeah. Well, the crazy part about Hong Kong, exactly what you're saying, and in the world trade, school, trade, business, so much goes through Hong Kong, and China knows if they lose Hong Kong, they lose a competitive edge. It's huge. That's worth so much money to them. And Hong Kong keeps asking us for help. They, I know you don't see it as much, but they on our regular news, but they really are, and that's why we've actually been sanctioning China, and that's another thing that's kind of been going under the radar. Everyone keeps asking about these Russian bounties, which true or not true.
No one wants to talk about
read about the Cold
trade
War.
warfare happening with China right now,
And
because it's scary if you think about it. Like this is just building up tension.
And at the end of the day, China can say one day two things. One, you owe us so much money, and we can just say, well, you owe the IMF the same amount of money, so go F yourself, right? Then they can say, okay, well, remember how like 60% of all your business is done, manufacturing through us? Guess what? We closed down everything.
We don't even need you guys anymore.
And that's why they're trying to become
funding all of your crazy efforts without the economic stimulus from the trade.
Which that would collapse companies. You think it's bad now, it would just ruin companies. And so they have this kind of carrot that they're dangling, saying, hey, one of these days we're clipping the carrot. And, and that's, they've argued this, and this is what people this is why I say, hey, we need to, I've been telling people, hey, we do need to bring stuff back to America because we can't keep relying on other countries. It's not even so much I love America and we need Americans. No, it's not even that. It's that survivability of long-term America lasts on what can we do here and stop relying on other people, because at the end of the day, this pandemic showed us that the world is still... we are susceptible of anything happening. So if it's not just war, but say is a true pandemic plague that comes out and wipes out half of Asia, well, no longer we have those factories. Our economy will be collapsed just from that. If we go to war with China and they say, okay, well, they're kicking out every business, and by the way, all this infrastructure, money, factories, we own this now. All your employees go home.
Then we're screwed.
Then what's going to happen? So companies will be crippled instantly. And, people kind of, again, we talked about this already multiple times, nobody cares about long-term effect. Nobody cares about what's going to happen 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now, But, hey.
The implications are crazy. So to get into deepfakes, and completely speculating here because we don't know what would happen in a scenario like this, but before the podcast, we were talking about how there are 2-minute papers about how technology is advancing to the point where you could take a sample of 5 seconds of audio of someone's voice and then type a paragraph of what you want them to say and synthesize the audio of them saying whatever speech you want. So on both fronts, if the Chinese created some sort of deep fake of Donald Trump, for example, kind of instigating war, or the United States creating deep fakes of, their own government to sway the opinion away from war, we don't know what the possibilities are when it comes to this technology because it's so new to us. And I think over time, as machine learning and artificial intelligence get better, it's going to be harder and harder to discern actual reality from synthesized, generated content that can be used to sway entire populations.
It's funny because say you use Photoshop to alter an image. Well, you can use Photoshop again to see if that's altered. But if they use a company that's outside the realm of Photoshop, to alter an image, or outside of our technology of deep fakes, how can we pick apart that it is truly a deep fake, right? If they're not using the same technology, if they have their own companies that are doing something, it's not so easy for us to even figure it out. I have a picture above you right now showing, it's Elizabeth Warren, and then it's an SNL character pretending to be Elizabeth Warren, and then it's a deep fake at the end of Elizabeth Warren's face deep faked on top of the SNL, and then above that is Trump. It's deep faked over Alec Baldwin. And
wow,
it's pretty crazy. It's pretty close. It's one of those things where it's people kind of forget the dangers of, in a perfect world, nobody cares about deep fakes. it's just fun. That's awesome. Like, I just sent you guys.
Cool. Here's this quirky little face replace app that you can now use to age your face, or switch faces with your mom, or something. And the reality of the situation is that it can be used. Wow, I'm watching the blending. Yeah. It could be used for nefarious purposes.
Mm-hmm. It's the problem is with humans is we've created so much to advance us, but there's two hands of advancement, right? There's how to kill and how to save, and that's how we advance ourselves from the beginning of time. How we got out of caves, how we got out of everything is how
bow and arrow.
Yeah, one hand,
but also penicillin.
Yeah, it's like you can kill something faster and save yourself faster. That's medicine and war. So medicine and war have been pretty much the advancements of the world and human life. And this deep fakes or the neural link, a lot of people are worried about, or chipping, or whatever you want to say, is yes, there are good real applications, but then the problem is who controls, who is doing it, why they're doing it, and the information behind it. So it's like deep fakes. Yeah, there's Instagrams about deep fakes, and that's funny. But then it's like, at what point does someone use it to cause a false flag, to cause issues around the world? And then who says that there hasn't been? We already mentioned Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden. That was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if the government has
they could
just 20 years
better
past,
at them.
Like, who says that they weren't working on this and already using a type of deep fake, maybe not the same exact one, but a type, or at least the idea of a deep fake?
Anyone who has hours of footage of themselves available to the public through news broadcasts, through YouTube, through any sort of imagery, paparazzi, they're susceptible to being attacked by some sort of deep fake operation where they have enough video or sound to create a very convincing image and then deploy it to the public somehow. You look at previous operations in like World War II and World War I, where they would like drop pamphlets of propaganda to help decide the war. What if you could just beam that to someone's phone? Now you don't need to fly a plane over that drops pamphlets that convince the enemy that the war is a lost cause or what have you. It could be as simple as making a TikTok and then only having it displayed to people in the United States, for example. That's kind of a crazy idea, but that's the reality that we're getting closer and closer to with the advent of this new machine learning and AI technology.
Well, it's pretty easy, like with this information spreading through like TikTok and through different avenues. So like, I don't know if you remember, but the Tulsa rally, I think it was the Tulsa rally, they had 100
people buying tickets to the rally,
them and whatnot. Well, a few things. A lot of people think it started with the K-pop. The K-pop didn't start it. It was an old white Democrat lady that started it. Got picked up by K-pop, and K-pop spread it for her. So she thought it was a joke. She did it as a joke for a few friends.
They appropriated Karen culture to further the narrative, if you will.
And it's spreading. And it just, look how easy it is to spread information, to spread this idea that it implants. An idea in someone's head is so easy. It is literally like an inception of like a plant, and it just keeps spreading and spreading and spreading. And so, that's a perfect, example you're saying, like with war, like use this TikTok to like discourage people for, winning the war or starting the war or whatever.
Or propagating some sort of political cause.
Mm-hmm. Well, what goes hand in hand and scary.
There's like layers to it,
The United States actually, under the Obama administration, got rid of the propaganda laws. So you cannot be liable anymore for spreading propaganda and misinformation through the news. So before, like, journalists were held to a standard, and they would have to retract and essentially apologize, or they could be legally responsible
if information was misinterpreted or misrepresented, right?
And not anymore. That happened in shit.
2016 or before that?
It was before that. I think it was like 2012-ish. They got rid of it. It was called the Santa Claus something Propaganda Act. And it was in place a long time ago because they were using subliminal messages and propaganda with like Coca-Cola and different images and imagery, and they realized like, oh my god, this is brainwashing people, and this is a problem. And you know, the only propaganda we're allowed is the military commercials, not fucking in movies, not, you know, see, it's not like private organizations weren't allowed to do it. So, you know, that's why you get that that MSNBC of the Kentucky firing range. They know it's a firing range from Kentucky. They darken and tint the video, and then they put live video from northern Syria. The Kurds are being massacred, you know, and then the dude that filmed it's like, wait, that's my video.
That's not what happened.
That's on Facebook. I just posted that. Someone just stole that, you know. And all they did was take it down. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't get in trouble. They didn't even get in trouble for stealing.
But the impact has already been made.
Exactly. Yeah, it's already out there. And
it's like, whoops, we released this piece of propaganda. Sorry, we'll just take it down. But millions of people will have already seen it or had an interaction with it. But.
You know, and then instead of having, you know, later on, like they say, instead of you know, their front line, they find out that the first page on the New York Times was a lie, right? Well, when their apologies on page 37 now, you know, in a little tiny square. So it's people don't even
no one hears
it
about it, and they continue to live their life as if the first report was accurate.
Mm-hmm.
They never see the correction.
Like Rachel Maddow made $25 million a year talking about the Russian game
conspiracy theories. Yeah.
And then doesn't even turn around and say like, oh hey, like I know for the last
by the way,
like she just like
that
goes
was
on
fabricated by the deep state in an attempt to remove Donald Trump or impeach him because he goes against all of the I guess precedents that have been set before, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not a politician. He hasn't been entrenched in that world.
Yeah, he wasn't groomed.
So of course they're going to attack him from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all political with that guy, and like there's a lot of hate, especially like Twitter's doing the whole entire deletion of QAnon supporters, and like that's like a big Trump push also, and like Chrissy Teigen, who took off 28 or 60,000 tweets about pedophilia. Like,
can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
Do you use Twitter frequently?
I just started.
So I have an anonymous Twitter. So
okay. Now, when you open the Twitter app, could you describe like what your feed looks like? The curated feed?
I follow both left and right people. I follow all news, and I follow like head figures. 70% of the information is the same stories. So, for instance, yesterday, 70% of my feed was AOC crying about being called an effing bitch.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's from New York, and she's never heard that in her life. You know, I'm Jenny from the Bronx, and I've never heard a man call a woman an effing B. You know what I'm saying? And then you get but because I follow both sides, I still get about 30% of the opposing ideas. You know, so then like, you know, the second biggest story that was on there was these little kids in Portland, toddlers, holding up signs saying F Trump and F the police. And this little girl's like, F the police, F Trump. She didn't say F, they were saying fuck. They're like, fuck the police.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was like, what? And it was funny because it was like, one story would be like, AOC was just cursed out by another man. This causes female abuse. And then it's like the next one's like, oh, by the way, it's so cute when little kids say fuck the police. And it's like, isn't that a double standard? But, you know.
Right. So going back to this whole deepfake machine learning thing, we were talking before about accounts that you can look at and say, yo, that's artificial as fuck.
Yeah.
There's no way someone from the Czech Republic is weighing in on this issue with a comment that has no interaction with their existence in some other part of the world. And the other video I shared to you guys before talks about how you can train a machine learning algorithm to look at a bunch of comments and then synthesize comments on a particular topic, say game reviews, for example. You could say, hey, look at all these game reviews, now create new game reviews. And then those synthesized game reviews are almost indistinguishable from real people. It's getting harder and harder to tell virtual information apart from reality.
Well, check this out. Like CNN has like these comments on there. They're like, you know, the whole entire thing right now is like, please wear a mask and like why you should wear a mask. But then you click on these people, they have like 10 followers, but the likes on the comments are like in the hundreds. So I'm just like, it looks
they prop up
suspect
certain accounts, and they're always the same accounts, right? Like if you go right now,
I've seen this one doctor account direct reply to any Trump tweet in my feed.
Yeah, his.
Have you seen that before?
It's H. Kurassian or something. Oh, I always
MD or something.
And I apparently their original
same
accounts
account
were taken off
all of the
and they
time.
have a new one, and apparently like I commented on there a couple of times. I was like, hey, how do you get to the top? Like, and, I talked a little crap about but it's her or it's those guys, and then there's like this girl from New Jersey. She's like some Greek girl. She's always on the top. It's always like the same three people always hitting the top, and it's like
who cover a very narrow perception of reality. Like these conversations that are often shoved in your face are very nuanced, not black and white conversations, and the answers underneath them are not nuanced in any way. They're very biased, and they support a very narrow perspective of the everyday person.
Well, do you ever watch Project Veritas?
Yeah, from time to time. I used to watch that more during the election, but I recently remember seeing, I think the last thing I saw was something about, it was like a series of like candid interviews with people who were talking about voter registration or something like that.
Yeah, I would recommend, because it kind of goes on what we're talking about, is the Facebook ones. So Facebook essentially, it was like a large majority, and especially of the people that do the auditing and the essentially go through accounts, go through posts, the ones who ban people, because it's not just an algorithm. They essentially, the algorithm pulls it out, then they review it. A person reviews what the algorithm pulls, right? And they're all politically biased, all of them, right? And so Facebook argues, well, our policy is non-biased, but 90% of our people that do the auditing are biased. And they even say, yeah, if it has pro-Republican or pro-Trump, we pull it. And we can't personally always pull Trump, but we can fact check and talk shit or block.
Or put a little notification that says this is
partially false. Yeah. Oh, dude. And it's funny because it's like, well, you know, going back to those like fake accounts, none of them are ever blocked. They're never fact checked. They're never, you know, no issues with these fake accounts.
They'll purge accounts and they'll make reports about the accounts they're purging, but only when it reflects the bias that they want to portray on their platform.
Yeah.
Also, this, I don't know if you guys have done this before. Can we take an intermission? I have to use the bathroom.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I could pause this.
Okay, cool.
Yep. All right. Sorry about that brief
I think I'm going to put this back on because I noticed that the lighting changed dramatically between before and now.
A second jump between this, it just, yeah, man, we're getting a little too close to the truth. Sometimes you need a little protection, you know. See, I
like to double foil it, if you will.
Shit, I'd rather wear a tinfoil hat during sex than a condom. But that's just my opinion. I may be wrong.
So we were just talking about Facebook having humans that kind of filter their content, but those humans have an internal bias there are limited ways in which you can combat that.
Yeah, and it's they fired one of the ladies that was talking.
She spoke up about it, didn't she?
Well, she
Yeah, no love for the white man anymore.
Yeah, well, she didn't speak up. She was making fun of and saying that, like, essentially, if you're a white guy, there's no way that you can fight a company for firing you. Like, if you're anything but a white male, you can argue why they fired you for
that
wrong
I'm a
reasons.
woman or
Yeah.
I'm this race or that race, and
so like,
that's kind of crazy if you think about
yeah,
it.
and so she was fired for that, and they said that doesn't go along with their standards and their training, and none of the other people were fired though that were in these videos, and the
Why
problem.
didn't she argue that she was fired because she was a woman?
Yeah, she could have tried. Maybe she's probably suing them, and she's probably, I don't know what she's doing. But she pretty much dug a grave because of what she said, and it's funny because we all have bias. Even if you
Yeah.
say you're not biased, you're technically biased in some sorts, because you could try not to be, and you could try to be super centered and super in the middle. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be bias. And that's the same thing what happened with the FBI and the Mueller
It's
investigation.
genetic.
Um,
There are genes in our genome that make it's kind of crazy to think about, but like, why isn't a dog attractive to you in any capacity? There are genes that code for that.
yeah.
Like that's just how biology has worked.
Wow, you don't believe in having bestiality? Okay. You're so biased.
don't tell
You're
anyone this,
you're
but I'm actually a furry.
Ooh, hey. Hey, it's nothing,
For sure.
Am I gonna get canceled by furries for saying
Right.
that?
What's your furry costume?
It's a shark. It's Left Shark from the Super Bowl where Katy Perry was
Katy Perry.
was killing it with the
Oh, yeah.
shark and stuff. That's my
Shark
personality.
do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
I sing that
Oh.
while I'm wearing the costume.
Do you do it like while you orgasm, or is it just randomly?
Before and after,
Oh, okay.
usually.
But yeah, man, like
So we were talking about something before this.
Oh yeah, so like bias is just it's human nature, and like it's funny because, if you watch like the Senate hearings of the Mueller report after the fact, and Lisa Page was super biased, literally having an affair with her other top FBI agent that was running the Mueller report. She was super anti-Trump,
That guy.
super just super biased, right? And it's like they're arguing, Rosenstein or Rosenberg, whatever his name is, was arguing, the former head of the DOJ was arguing that, people, have their political preference, but we don't try to put bias in our work. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be bias in your work. Your server
Right.
is going to be biased towards you because of who you are. Let's be honest.
You could argue that the classism bias is huge because if you consider someone like Hillary Clinton having their entire email database erased and not getting convicted of trying to cover up something, if it was anyone else, wouldn't you think that they would have been pursued?
Oh, yeah. It's funny.
The
Well,
bias goes that far and that deep into the infrastructure of, say, the FBI or anyone who would be in charge of investigating a crime like that.
mhm.
People who are rich and powerful will always have the upper hand because they can escape a conviction
Mm-hmm.
for something the layman would be imprisoned for.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
why they've
sure.
gone after more of the poor pedophiles than the rich pedophiles. And it's funny because it's like, how many people have lied in the last just 4 years to Congress and to the Senate? How many people under oath? How many people have lied? Like all
It's
of
impossible to tell.
yeah, almost all of them have come. It's come to light that almost all of them have lied, and from
Oh, they actually have?
yeah, like
all
well,
lied?
Oh, yeah.
Brennan,
I mean,
pretty
like-
much. Well, like John Brennan, right? Former head
Yeah.
of the CIA lied. Hillary Clinton lied. Comey, McCabe,
Comey.
all of them. Like I mean, I'm talking about the political spectrum. So, they've all lied, and nothing's happened. They've actually profited off their lies rather than been in trouble. So, it's this.
Obama's a billionaire.
Oh,
at this point.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny because people are getting mad at Trump for doing things that Obama signed into law and action.
Like the federal taking people in unmarked cars, that one.
Well, it's not technically that. It's that you are able to deputize other federal agencies and move them to somewhere else to protect and so it's multiple things. So you can deputize federal agents to be police for federal land, and then another thing is if you deem a group a terrorist, right, domestic or abroad, you are able to do things with around the law. So you no longer have to follow government law. So our constitution.
I was just talking to my dad about that situation where federal officers were extracting like individuals.
Antifa.
Mm-hmm.
So his perspective was that that's a strategy that they use. If you look at like somewhere like Portland, they've been rioting and protesting ongoing for how long now? Is it
54
50
days?
Yeah, it's more than that.
54 days
now.
of protest. And the governor of the state has not been in a position of leadership to control the population and stop things like small businesses from being burnt down in the crossfire of all of this anarchy. There's no figurehead or leader to the resistance, if you'll call them. So there's no way to achieve an end in which the so-called like protesters are satisfied with the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Because the governor has sided with them previously and been booed out of the crowd. Have you guys seen that video?
That was the mayor. Yeah, that was the mayor.
I'm sorry, the mayor,
Yeah.
not the governor.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I feel like this has been ongoing anarchy in Portland to what end? Like, what do you think they're getting out of continuing to protest?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, what do they
Trump
want?
out of office.
Because, you know...
Are they trying to stain Trump's reputation more than
Yeah,
anything
they're also
else?
trying to defund the
So,
police,
well-
and like the mayor said, he doesn't want to do that.
So this is...
Right.
This is
Because what happens when you defund the police really quick, because this happened in New York, they disbanded the gang crime unit in New York City, and gun violence has gone up. There have been multiple instances of shootings where people were trying to resolve some sort of conflict stemming from drugs, because there's no longer plainclothes officers to catch people selling firearms to each other, selling drugs to each other. So it's kind of spiraled out of control in New York City, and there's no one to stop it because they've defunded the groups that are usually in place to prevent this sort of crime.
Same in
Yeah,
Chicago.
well, it's already shown because there have been cities that have defunded police in some ways or another. But the problem is people think that defunding the police gets regular police officers, less of those. But what happens is the specialty units, specialty officers, forensic, they lose money because the regular police officer on the street costs less money than a specialty unit. All right.
Right.
Like if you have a degree or you're specialized,
Those are the ones that get hurt,
Yeah.
and those are ultimately the ones that are reducing crime statistics unilaterally. Like, people talk about how the police should be better. One of the things they say is more training, more specialization, and they refrain from talking about the money it costs to give police. Say if you wanted a unit specifically for domestic violence, it takes time and money to train them to be ready to handle that kind of scenario. And now if you're breaking the police into a department with firearms, a department with less than lethal intervention, a department with specifically no weapons whatsoever, and they just go talk everyone down, that's going to take time and money to train everyone appropriately to handle the scenarios that they're given.
Yeah.
And it sucks that like a single police officer is expected to be equipped to handle any sort of situation, and it often escalates in seconds. There's no way to prevent that. So to think that you can just say, come up with this like very far-reaching statement, defund the police, and have that be a solution to the problems that you're seeing, it seems kind of misguided, and it seems like a mob mentality settled on a sentence that's easy to say and has no real world execution with positive outcome.
So you don't see their art. Well, you don't see their.
Okay, go for it.
Well, I was going to talk about that, police themselves. So, like, you don't see people actually giving real, okay, so if we do defund the police, how are we going to reallocate this money? They're saying, okay, we're going to make social workers. Well, now you have to have someone with a degree working in a specialized position that's putting themselves in harm's way and danger. That's going to cost a lot of money, right? That individual is going to cost more money than a regular police officer. And, going back to you saying, like, oh, they need to make better people, more, training. At the end of the day, they just need to make better human beings, right? Like, if people are better, not just the police officer, so not just the person that goes to become police, but people that are on the streets. The average person needs to be better rather than just the police. Because if the average person's better, the people becoming police are better as well. You can talk about San Francisco.
Yeah, the San Francisco mayor just said they're going to have non-weaponized people to handle crimes now. They just put that up.
Non-violent crimes.
Non-violent crimes, which is, like, again, like what AJ just said, it can happen in seconds.
Well, okay, so a perfect example is what happened in Arizona, yesterday or 2 days ago? This lady, pulled by the police. I don't know all of the exact...
I just watched that video earlier.
Got shot, right? Well, that was not I don't believe it was a violent crime. I don't think they were trying to detain her. She tried to get away and pulls a gun out, right? So if you're a social worker trying to stop them, what do? Run? Like,
she's now firing rounds at you. How are you gonna de-escalate the situation
with a Care Bear stare
when you're in an underpowered situation?
Yeah,
and then there was the
situation.
I forget where it was, but there's Hakeem Littleton. Have you guys heard of that?
Sounds familiar.
There's a guy who basically fired a round right next to a police officer's head in an attempt to escape. And the police around him had no other choice but to open fire on him because he had that's aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, if you look at the legal scheme of things. So the police opened fire on him as he was pointing a gun behind him, running away, and people were shouting things like, say his name. They were rioting in the streets, looting, burning down buildings, where this was a justified use of force on behalf of the police who were in imminent danger. They were getting shot at. It's crazy to think that people are mad at police for defending themselves against criminals.
Yeah, I saw a video, I think it was Arizona again, where this guy was in like a Walmart parking lot with a knife. And it was a female officer. She was trying to talk him down like a social worker would, quote unquote. And he rushes her with a knife. And she had to shoot him. If you're a social worker, right, trying to talk someone down and they knife you to death in front of people.
Do you get tasers if you're a social worker? And even then, like, tasers, there are a lot of factors that affect the efficacy of tasers. Someone could be wearing clothing that's too thick and the probes won't attach properly and the taser will be nullified. So to think that police officers are constantly putting themselves in danger and the average police officer will willingly die to protect citizens, it's crazy that they're being demonized to the point where now they're taking away the only tools they have to protect themselves against actual criminals, as if those don't exist. As if there aren't people out there who are willing to shoot a police officer to continue doing whatever crimes they're doing. And I would go as far to say that, like, people who argue that police are the existing systemic racism from the before time. Police are only acting as agents of the ideas that have been propagated throughout society. Say drugs are bad, right? If you remove the reason for police to be in low-income areas searching for people selling drugs, doesn't that solve the problem of them getting violent with the average citizen who's just trying to live their life? For example, if they went to prison, now they can't get a job. It's more lucrative to sell drugs in their area. Wouldn't it make sense for to be less violence if police weren't told to actively police people who are working on the illicit market because they can't survive any other way in their area?
Well, that's totally honest. And the thing is, there's two problems, right? One, the crime bill, and two, not only the war on drugs. And the reason why the war on drugs has not stopped is because street drugs are competition of pharmaceuticals.
Correct.
You know,
and even in places like California, they have been struggling to compete with the illicit market because the government is applying so much red tape to the process that it's cheaper to obtain drugs illicitly than it is to go to a dispensary and purchase them.
So for like dollar to dollar amount in California, before I moved, you know, you can get something from someone you know for cheaper, higher percentage, and less, you know, chemicals sprayed on it. Like you go to MedMen,
right.
You get their cheapest.
There's a lot of guidelines for how they have to kind of cater to the crop and produce it.
Yeah, there's also cheap ways to do it.
Yeah, and one of their ways of making something feel more potent without being more potent is spraying it down with terpenes. Terpenes became huge in 2017-18 because what happened was they realized terpenes have multiple effects, right? So you have the aroma, you have the entourage effect, and you have weight. It gives it more weight, it causes the entourage effect, which makes it more potent, and it smells better. So they were, you know, you go to MedMen, you get their MedMen regular, you know, eighth, right? Like just like the MedMen eighth. It will tell you, I don't know anymore, but in 2018, it would tell you right on the bottle, this has been sprayed with terpenes.
Right.
And it's like, someone would smoke it and then be like, whoa, I'm high for 5 minutes. And then 10 minutes later, like, dude, I'm hungover. What? This is not weed. Weed is not supposed to do that.
You feel completely groggy.
Yeah, and it's not supposed to do that. And then you have people like, okay, well, I'm not, like, it costs the same amount or less. So, like, the cheapest weed before tax, right, is the same as street weed. And at least, like, street weed, you know, it's like, okay, well, I don't know who made this, but it's not some giant factory where they spray it down. They use, like,
mass produce and cut corners to gain the greatest yields from the smallest amount of crop.
What kind of pesticides, what kind of, you know, whatever would have you. So, and then you add on, not only is it expensive because of so what they were doing in California under Prop 64 was they had taxing at every corner. So if you're a grower, not only when you know, sell it, it gets taxed. When you test it, it gets taxed. When you transport it, it gets taxed. But how much...
The markup is unreal.
How much
the markup is insanely unreal.
How much you do is taxed. So, like, there's different tax brackets on how much you produce. And then
And sorry to interject,
No.
but the funds that are being generated from the taxed portion of the whole trade, they're not even being allocated properly.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
Continue
completely
with
true.
Especially in California.
And then...
No, you're right.
And then...
That's why the legal market for distributors is being limited so greatly, because they're trying to test the outcome of legalization from metrics that stem from poor allocation of the resources that are being generated from it. So the sentiment is being created that it's not worth the time because the money is not working where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
The black market's also humongous.
Well, again, that's
right.
It's humongous because you have an eighth that should be $35 going for $65 plus tax. A sales tax that's higher than regular sales tax. 25%. So it's not like you're paying an 8.75 sales tax. You're paying a 25.5, 35.5% sales tax. That's fucking insane. On top of the higher marked up price.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably getting less for your money.
It's trash, bro.
At one point, MedMen was selling stuff that was packaged a year before.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Seriously?
Yeah, Mexican weed is better than that at that point. That's why the black market and the problem about the black market is there's technically two black markets in California. There's Prop 215 compliant, non 64 compliant black market, and then there's the black market from Mexico, right? So the reason why I say the Prop 215 non 64 is from when they switched it over to recreational, from medical to recreational, a lot of people couldn't either afford or go through the guidelines of 64, so they no longer could sell under 64, which is the new proposition that made it recreational. So they try to continue to sell under 215 because they're like
in the illicit market.
Yeah.
And so
there's still secret sessions to this day.
So there's secret sessions, underground, purely medical, quote unquote, churches. So that's technically still part of the black market because it's not getting taxed the same way and it's different, right? It's not the recreational weed. So if it's non-recreational and if they say that they're under 215, which again, I haven't been there in a while, but during the time I did live there, that was the issue. That's why the black market tripled, because it wasn't technically that, oh my God, Mexico and random people that are just growing weed in their backyard has gone up. It's because these businesses that have been selling it, growing it, no longer have an avenue through 64. And so that's why the black market surged, right? Like you could...
Right.
So am I going to pay the $65 for Prop 64 weed? Or am I going to pay
Or are you going to make your money back on the investment you made under the guise that you would get your money back through the illicit market, and then now you have to be like, holy shit, I invested all of this into the old proposition. How am I going to make my money back?
Exactly.
I already dumped all of it into this.
I mean, even the like Prop 64 people are selling on the black market because the taxes are so high for the company on Prop 64.
Well, they have they have spoiled goods. Like there was a girl that in Arizona, she owned part of a collective and a grow, and right before it went spoiled, they would give her, all the owners would just take a whole bunch and sell it, and sell it for super cheap to people they knew, because it was like, well, do we throw out our product and lose hundreds of thousands of dollars with product, or do we just sell it on the black market, quote unquote?
Yeah. Crazy to think about how much of this would have been mitigated if in the 1920s, when Henry Anslinger was the head of the Prohibition movement, if he had been stopped. Like, people talk about going back in time to stop Hitler, right? But what if you went back in time to stop Henry Anslinger from demonizing minorities who were, like, the new alcohol was weed. Before even pharmaceutical drugs had hit the illegal market, like when you're the joint head of staff for the Prohibition movement and then suddenly alcohol is legalized, how do you ensure your job security? By pursuing some sort of other illicit substance. And if you look back at how it was demonized originally, they created that term marijuana to describe what had been around for forever, to kind of say, oh, this is this illicit substance that you can't have now. And as a result, the minority communities who had been engaging in that substance were targeted and put through the prison industrial complex. So if you went back in time and stopped that after Prohibition had ended, and you said, hey, Henry Anslinger, instead of going on to create this federal anti-drug war agency, you don't have a job anymore. What would today be like?
Millions of lives would have changed.
Yeah.
Right?
For the better. Yeah,
I don't think anyone would be hooked on oxycodone or trying to get more prescription drugs because they have been there's a positive feedback mechanism for those being propagated to people who have pain problems.
I mean,
There's a whole branch of
yeah.
medicine. It's called pain medicine. It's about how to manage people who are prescribed these opiates, and the science of it is figuring out how much you can give them before they overdose. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy to think about?
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Dude.
job for that instead of a clinic that lets you go and use heroin until you can stop using heroin because your life circumstances have improved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nuts. They just allowed CBD to be used in the military too.
Really?
So yeah, that
I heard
should be
one of the
interesting.
branches was not. Is that true?
Allowing
I think
CBD?
Space Force was it.
No, I think it was Air
But,
Force.
like-
I thought.
Yeah,
Well,
like
the
I
Space
know.
Force is
Like,
getting-
The crazy thing is that
being
the
partners.
medical implications are already understood of CBD specifically, you know? So,
Mhm.
like, to think that, say, athletes would be ejected for using CBD. Isn't that crazy? Like,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's retarded. Like, to be honest, like
Yeah, it's just this demonization that we have, where it's like you have to have things that are bad, and things that are normally bad for you, they're like, oh, but it makes us money, so we're not gonna, it's funny because I actually knew somebody who I actually had I spoke about in this one of the podcasts before. I had a roommate that when I moved in with him, I didn't know he was addicted to heroin, and I found out that he was addicted to heroin. And we ended up getting him off heroin. We used something that's almost worse, Suboxone, because to help him get off, we had like a weekend where we literally took off and just pretty much performed like a quick exorcism. And that's what it looked like.
Did you intervention him?
Sort of. So I came home one day from work late at night, and the dude, like his girlfriend broke up with him, and he was just like strung out, dude. I just see loons everywhere. And I was already like not cool with it. I already was like, don't do it around me, He was functioning. He had 2 jobs. He went to school full time. Went to Laverne, So
I hear a lot of stories of people who will like shoot up in the morning, then go to work a full day, and then
yeah, well, because
they're very functional, high functioning.
Yeah, well, he started with
addicts.
OxyContin, right? And he ended up.
Was he prescribed it?
Yeah,
at
he
any
was.
point?
I think he was prescribed at one point. He stopped, so he started buying it. He ended up ODing on OxyContin. We switched to heroin after he OD'd instead of just stopping in general. And so after I got home and he had loons everywhere, and he was just like gone, dude. And he just kept smoking. I was just like, dude, what are you doing? And he's just like, I don't care anymore. I'm gonna try to OD again. And I was like, dude, you can't. And he I grabbed him, and he straight. I was like, yo, I'm going to take this from you. And he pulled a knife on me. And I was like, all right.
What?
Yeah, I was like, you know what? I'm leaving. I'm going to a friend's house. I think I might have gone to George's or Ryan's mom's house or something. And I was like, I will be back tomorrow.
You had to get out of
And
there.
I was like, we're going to have a different
Yeah.
conversation tomorrow when you sober up. And so, me and a couple friends were like, look, this has gone too far. You can't do this. We're done. We got him Suboxone. And then we essentially spent a weekend of him just... The best way
Withdrawing.
his withdrawals were essentially like an exorcism, dude. He was foaming at the mouth, convulsing, screaming,
I've
hitting
seen
walls.
that shit before.
Like,
when I used to work in the ER, there would be drug. Forgot the term for them, but they would basically come into the ER saying that they have pain because they wanted drug relief, and they were about to go into withdrawal. And I remember seeing a patient that had been so far gone because of her withdrawal that it was unlike anything I've ever seen before. Like the withdrawal hits people in crazy
pretty
ways.
humbling, huh?
yeah. Well, he was trying. So essentially, what happened was I didn't even smoke weed at this time. This what actually got me into weed was because he was just one day like, hey, I'm feeling like I'm gonna relapse. I need something, right? Alcohol just doesn't do it. And so during this time, this was 9 years ago almost. And so in California, it was just medical, and it wasn't like, hey, you can just go to a corner shop and get it. You'd have to drive all the way to Santa Monica, Venice, right? You had to go to LA, right? We were in Pomona, so we drove all the way to LA and to get him a medical marijuana card. And he's like, yeah, can you I need to start smoking or something because I can't. And you know what, he never went back on it. to this day, like, he smokes pot here and there, and and like on.
It's a great way to disconnect from whatever problems you have without creating an addictive habit.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who have addictive personalities and have been hooked on painkillers, I feel like if they are given the option to have a non-addictive alternative to come to that same state of disconnect with reality that pot offers, they would be less likely to be entrenched in this culture of finding it in the illicit market and relying on it as a substance for them to disconnect because there's no alternative that they can obtain legally. And as a quick aside, like I have this scar on my elbow. I don't know if you could see it. I shattered my elbow skateboarding, and I was prescribed oxycodone as a painkiller. And this was during my sophomore year of college, where I had like a ton of tests. And fortunately for me, I was able to come to the realization that like I could not read a paragraph and retain the information without reading it like 5 times, and by then I was like mentally exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
In order to pass my finals, I could not take the painkiller medication, and it was easier for me to say, fuck the pain, I'm gonna just get through this semester because there was so much riding on it.
Yeah.
Than to just say, you know what, I need these painkillers. I don't care if my brain feels fuzzy. I'm gonna just fucking try to take the test, whatever. It became clear to me that people who are otherwise left to their own devices or do not have any sort of outside conviction to stop taking painkillers, it's very much the easier way of life to fall into because of the comfort it gives you, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense.
I don't like any.
The prescription I got was indefinitely renewable.
Whoa.
Like infinite refills.
Fucking New York, man. That's fucking...
Yeah, I saw a special on like, there were like these people that were going to like, I think it was in Miami, where at some point like they didn't track who you're getting prescriptions from. So people were clinic hopping and getting prescriptions after prescriptions, and once one came out,
that shit is crazy.
They'd go to a different clinic and say, hey, I had the surgery, I have pains, I need this prescription. You know, it's
in New York.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine.
In New York, there's when I was working in the ER, there's this public database that anytime you prescribe drugs that are narcotic in nature, you have to basically log in with your medical degree and say you are prescribing this drug to a specific person. And this is an infrastructure created in direct response to the amount of people who are now hooked on things like oxycodone, painkillers in general. If you type into this database that you're prescribing them this drug, and now they're going to another clinic or ER, it's policy that they have to check that database before they prescribe the drug, because they don't want to have as many people. I think of it in the grand scheme of things, they don't want to have as many people returning to the ER with symptoms of withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but in reality, it's because they want to track the narcotics and prevent people from ER hopping and saying, oh, I have this pain in my back, and the only thing the doctor can use to treat it is things like oxycodone, Percocet, hydromorphone, or like whatever sort of opium derivative they can give the person. So the highly addictive nature of those kinds of drugs, it just plays into the idea that people have no other choice but to obtain an illicit alternative like heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
that's what happens.
That's
a lot of times people
trip,
go from, I no longer can afford and or obtain these drugs, so I'm going to go to the cheaper street version because it's more accessible and cheaper.
Right.
And it's just crazy that like
Trap.
pharmaceuticals are sometimes like are a direct cause of an opioid problem, and it's still widely used. And I understand. Look, I had a hernia surgery like right here. I've had open chest surgery twice as an infant. I
Really?
had some scar tissue that built up, and one day I tore it at the top of my abs, and
No way.
I had a $50 size hole in me, where like my stomach would fall through, and I could push through with two fingers. That's how deep, like wide it was. It was pretty bad. Even the doctor, like the hernia specialist, was like, "What? I don't even need to like scan you. Like I can see this. It protrudes when you eat." Like yeah, it was that bad. And so I he gave me some very strong Vicodin after, and I took it once. And this is not even, this is not even nothing compared to, oxycodone. And I couldn't even take it a second time. I couldn't. I was like, I'd rather be in pain or smoke weed than take this. Like,
Have to deal with this drug.
what it did
in
to
your
me, like
system.
it made me angry. It made me have crazy dreams. It made me hot. Like I would get like super burning hot, and I started getting pissed. Like I was just like, I'd rather just literally go through the pain. And like I understand, like everybody has different pain tolerances, and like I can't really understand someone who has a true back problem. But then I understand that people psych themselves out. I understand that people can tell themselves so many times, my back hurts, until literally it will never stop hurting, because all you do is say my back hurts. And people psych themselves out to the point, especially if you are addicted to a drug, you will start having that pain because you're literally
It's a psychosomatic response
Yeah.
to being addicted to it. That's the release you get from taking the drug. And so your brain thinks it's worth it to seek out that drug to obtain the same dopamine response that you get when you obtain it and take it.
Exactly. So it's it's just sad that we're not investing into alternate avenues, because again, and like I've had family members that have had issues and friends with these drugs, and it's like, myself, I'm lucky.
I feel like we all have.
Yeah, I feel like I'm lucky that I haven't. It's like, just imagine if just one day you did try it, or one day you did get addicted, after your surgery, say you did get addicted. And so it's like,
Yeah.
where would you be now if you were? It's so easy to look down on someone that has an addiction, but you should more count yourself to be lucky that you're not the one with the addiction, rather than the one who was able to like either overcome it or just not, fall victim to it.
Yeah.
But
It makes me wonder if there's any resolution for that type of thing, because something like the pharmaceutical industry would always shut down an opportunity for that kind of alternative market to flourish.
Trump signed an executive order today to essentially have prescriptions become cheaper so people can ship it from Canada, Mexico, also. So my brother-in-law was saying, "Oh, people have to approve it," but I'm not sure if it. I'm pretty sure when you sign an executive order, it's good to go, right?
So there's a difference between a law and executive order. So, but yeah, I was reading about that. So essentially, because there's a lot of, I hate how people go back and say there are this X amount of elderly on Medicaid or Medicare that need prescription drugs, right? And it's like, so many Americans are on prescription drugs. So many Americans are on prescription drugs. So we need them cheaper. We need them cheaper. That's like a huge talking point.
Yeah.
And so like they've had a 13% drop in costs. They made it so there was an executive bill that was passed, I think, 2 years ago. So now pharmacists have to be able to give options, so not just like the most expensive. Now there's more options, and now with the new executive bill, they can have non-American but stay within the MSMC, right? So like as long as it's from Mexico or Canada, it could come in cheaper, which I think that's good because it'll drive competition. But again, it's still
The implications of ending the drug war are untold.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because it's been this deeply entrenched in the illicit market that trying to compete with pharmaceuticals would be impossible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny because America's put itself in a couple wars, quote unquote wars, that have become endless, and it's like their rationale almost behind ending them is, well, why did we spend so much time and money? This makes us look bad at the end. Like the war in Afghanistan. It's like, why are we still there? Like, they can't have a good reason. Like, well, if we leave now, it was all for nothing. It's the same with the drug war. Well, if we fix it now, it's all for nothing. It's like, how is that an excuse to, because that's a false excuse. They're, again, smoke and mirrors. That's the reason they give you, but it's really because of, pharmaceutical companies and actually, sadly, those kind of go hand in hand. You even mentioned it. It's funny that the poppy that's from Afghanistan helps drive the opioid, which is a cause of issues in America, which drives the drug war. So they almost go hand in hand. It's kind of crazy, right? And
how are these politicians elected? Through campaigns that require a lot of money. And where does the money come from? Like, who is influencing these people to spend the time and energy to get elected?
Mm-hmm.
It's the people who have a stake in creating the policy that allows them to continue their whatever endeavor they have.
Mm-hmm. I've been trying to get the word out about the NASARA Act and JASARA.
What's that about?
So, a quick introduction to it. So, it's an act that's kind of been around and it's been kind of suppressed. But essentially, it's a government reset in multiple ways. So, all elected officials in the federal government and House, Senate, all them, Congress, President, all those elected officials, which goes beyond them actually, they have 120 days to be reelected, right? So, and so
that's kind of genius.
You don't have enough money, time, and resources to run a new campaign in 120 days, right? So it's off your merit and what you've done. 2, not only does that, another thing it does is it restructures our tax system, right? It removes the Federal Reserve. It goes back to a gold, platinum, silver, and
standard
and precious items, metals, and whatnot standard. And then it switches over, gets rid of the it restructures the IRS, gets rid of the Federal Reserve, and when it restructures the IRS, essentially how it happens is they remove most of their taxes. Well, okay, it removes the IRS, creates a new IRS, and the only taxes are off import, export, sell, property sales, and I think it gets rid of.
Can you imagine the amount of elites that are displaced by something like that?
So there's no more income tax. There's no more specific there. I forgot exactly which taxes changed, but it essentially.
Would you describe it as a libertarian restructuring of America, or is it something else?
I would say it's a partially libertarian, partially pre-Federal Reserve, right? Because at one point in America that. It's going back to what the original taxes were. We weren't taxed on what we were taxed 100 years ago or 150 years ago. The tax structure was completely different than now.
So have you ever done any research into the GDP versus median average income?
No.
So there's this divide in the 70s where if you look at a graph where this is GDP and this is global, median average income, not global average income, median average income. Up until the 70s, they were kind of moving together. And then in the 70s, GDP increases substantially and median average income kind of stagnates or slowly increases. And there have been several speculative, ideas as to why that has happened, but it seems as if that's the reason why you can't work one job and go to college, aside from the inflation that has been propagated from the banks
Well,
giving more to student loans.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the inflation from the 70s to now, to how much the cost of um, cars, the cost of college, they're not equal. They didn't raise the same. It's not the same. Like, to
I
say
think
college
if
is more expensive
minimum
because
wage,
of inflation.
if minimum wage increased at the same rate that it should have to coincide with inflation, it should be like $20-$30 an hour, something like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
It hasn't scaled with inflation appropriately.
well, that's how
Yeah.
you create so many more billionaires. And it is a problem with see, I have a so I'm very like in the middle on, like, I can see the good and the bad with like raising minimum wage, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is, I feel like the problem about minimum wage is majority of jobs shouldn't be in it. Those should be very low level, very introductory jobs that people with no skills, um, essentially no skills,
No educational
educations,
background.
nothing should
Yeah.
have, right? And then so essentially, like, hey, if you're in high school or starting college, you should make minimum wage plus, right? But
Right.
the problem is you have a lot of people that are in 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s now that have to have minimum wage jobs because they weren't able to financially be stable and obtain, either the education or the raises. And so, and then you look at people like, I see people in, Arizona that are working desk jobs that went to college, they have a degree, and they're making $35,000 a year. And then they're going to a restaurant where the server makes $80,000.
Is that livable? Is that livable in Arizona?
In Arizona,
35,000.
It's
Yeah.
technically livable,
But it's paycheck to paycheck,
Yeah.
more or less, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing with New York. Like, you can get a clerical job where you don't even need college and be making more. You could be making more than someone who has gone to college and started a similar job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's part of the reasons why I kind of stayed in the service industry, because I was making more money than all my friends with degrees. Like,
Yeah.
And
That's a harsh reality, because, like, even with this coronavirus thing, I have a degree in biology, and I was, like, looking into jobs, and there's really nothing out there.
there's a meme of a dog, like, and like explosions in the background. It's like looking on the computer and it's like trying to apply for a job during the COVID pandemic. Like, it's pretty true, and it's like one of those things where, like, I look at like Elon Musk, right? And it's like, yeah, he's worth a lot of money, he's eccentric, a lot of people don't like his like personal life. But then if you actually like look into the job growth, his board members actually complain that he gives out too many bonuses with his companies and too much stock options. That was a complaint. They wanted to remove him from Tesla for giving too much bonuses and stock options
To the
his-
people who work there and
Yeah.
are generating this giant
Yeah.
cash cow that everyone has invested in.
Yeah, and it's like it's one of
That's
those.
some bullshit.
It's bullshit, and I know everyone has their problem with him and whatnot, but it's like he's about to put $1 billion infrastructure in the new factory for the Gigatruck. They're saying it's just for the Gigatruck. I personally think it's going to be the new main Tesla, but they're
He's
putting
out of California.
they're putting
He's learned a lot from creating that
yeah
city, more or less, in California, and
Mhm.
now he realizes that he has this new opportunity to do it right, maybe.
yeah
I was talking to my friend about this before. There are people like Jeff Bezos who just create this idea of Amazon, and they are, or Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like, they're addicted to the idea of growing this thing they made into the biggest thing. And they're smart in one way, in the sense that they have very good business sense and they know what it takes to make their idea huge. But then you have people like Elon Musk that are so smart that they're the Tesla or Edison of our era, and they have ideas that could actually propel us to the next level of humanity. But they're being limited by the society that has been created out of this corruption or otherwise like systemic abuse of people in power.
Well, it's also funny because, like, if you talk to someone 10, 15 years ago, they would say, let's say 10, when, like, Facebook started just over 10 years ago. Like, right when it started getting bigger. People are, and, you know, you look at Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, everyone's like, oh, the tech industry is where the next billionaires are going to be in the next growth in human jobs and whatever. Now you're looking at someone, Elon. Well, Elon has branched out into aerospace, tech, technically now tech, between Neuralink and Starlink, and then automobile. Like, if you were to tell someone 15, 20 years ago that one of the most expensive, highly profiting, fastest growing stock is a vehicles company, they would laugh in your face and say,
completely disruptive.
Every like economic like a I can't even say the word right now. I'm sorry.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah. It would make no
economy.
sense. Yeah, in the economy, like the top experts would say, no, you're crazy. That would never happen. And it is true. Just during this pandemic that has happened, the Tesla stock has gone from $900 to $1,500 in months, and keeps growing. And it had a dip, of course, but you know, it's
everything
just,
did.
Yeah, everything keeps dipping, and again, people forget it's humans that control it. You know, if you own a lot of stocks and you pull out, that's going to drop it. You know, when our wonderful politicians have insider trading and they pull stocks, they pull $10 million worth of stocks out, it's probably going to affect it just a little bit. You know,
right.
So you know, it's interesting where we put our faith in our heroes, and you know, people are creatures of habit. And if something works, they just want to keep doing that. They have such a problem with innovation. Even though they say they believe in innovation and they want innovation, they really do have a problem with doing it themselves or doing it as a mass. They always applaud somebody that is profitable while being innovative, right? But sometimes being innovative, it's not profitable in the short term. And people have such a problem with that because it is about the cash. It is about, and the problem is, if you actually look at from the 70s, as you were talking with the GDP, there's a lot of people in Wall Street, in the government, that became rich and kind of decided, let's put profits over anything in that era. But
yeah, I feel like there's so much more to it than we can wrap our heads around. Have you guys ever thought about like the tiers of wealth in our country? Like, sure, there's billionaires we know about, but what about the people who got rich before publicity was a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they still exist?
Well, I saw like somebody post like 40% of billionaires inherited the money. Which would be, or inherited a company that grew into $1 billion company. But yeah, that, there are a lot of secret billionaires, a lot of people you don't know about. There's a lot of people, and also, what makes you a billionaire in America? Is it cash or assets, right? Like, for instance, Kylie Jenner doesn't have $1 billion in the bank. All her companies and whatever she owns is worth $1 billion, right? So she's
total of the assets.
Yeah, so she's cash poor, paper rich. They call that, right? And that's what they always say about Trump. He's probably cash poor, paper rich. Like, he's not. He's
a low tier wealthy person.
Yeah. So there are two types. There's people that like, for instance, Jeff Bezos. They just said is worth is like. In the
13 billion he made in one day or some shit.
But it's like, does he have that, or is that his company's worth? Now, if he pulls his stocks out, is that what it's worth? Is he paid off? Is it like, what makes him that? Like, how many billions does he have, cash wise? And we never talk about the billionaire, trillionaire people cash. Like, we don't talk. Well, you see like, oh hey, this oil tycoon or whatever, but we don't really talk about who has how much money cash.
I remember seeing a video about how tech entrepreneurs are worth more on paper than they are in reality.
Mhm.
And they use this technique of basically showing the bank how much their stocks are worth in order to obtain more or less a line of credit to buy their mansions and private jets and shit like that.
Well, that's why so many people, when they stop making money or their company goes down or something happens, they lose everything because, a lot of people aren't paying for cash. Like someone like Bill Gates, he personally has a lot of money. A lot of the old time, people like George mentioned, like Rockefeller, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Carnegie, and people who had that money prior to, prior to the let's just say 70s is the marker, or let's say the tech boom. Before the tech boom, a lot of them had cash. It wasn't just worth, right? And it's funny because a lot of people, they don't know there's a difference. They don't know that there's a difference between how much someone's worth and how much money they have.
They just see the number and they perceive, say, like Jeff Bezos as being one of those extremely wealthy people where a lot of their income is diverted into like R&D or an offshore account that lets them reinvest the money into the company without tax to grow it even bigger than it is.
Yeah.
All right, let's. It's about 2 hours and 21 minutes.
Shit.
Let's start to wrap it up a little
Been
bit.
going on for a while.
Hey, it's just good conversations that people need to hear. I'll probably cut this one up a little bit. It's gonna take a little longer.
Do
but
some clips.
hey,
Yeah. A lot of
any
good clips.
final thoughts? Any kind of wrap up final thoughts on your end? I know we kind of covered a lot.
Everything.
I think I'm good, but since you guys are publishing this to the World Wide Web, I think I'm gonna put this back on just to be safe.
Oh yeah.
You can never be too careful.
I dig it.
Oh, yeah. George, any final thoughts on your end?
Man, there was a lot to consume, and I digged it all. So, I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah, man. I think you just expanded George's lexicon today. But hey, man, I really appreciate that, AJ. Thanks for being on here. Definitely, you're gonna be back on here at another point. There's so much to talk about, so much. But I really appreciate the time that you took. Hopefully, it's not too late for you by now out there. But thanks for being on. Keep your eyes open, all three of them. See you around.
Later.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Of
I'll
course.
catch you later.
See you.
Later.